mineral isn't studied in the U.S., does that mean it isn't important? As we learned in a previous episode, sometimes American doctors and researchers resist giving credence to studies conducted abroad. This certainly appears to be the case with the mineral magnesium. Magnesium is integral to as many as 800 enzyme reactions in the body, yet very few modern people get enough of it. Dr. Carolyn Dean, author of The Magnesium Miracle, joins us today to discuss how she first discovered the power of this miracle nutrient and the broad range of health complaints supplementation can address. Coming up next on the Nutrition Heretic podcast.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
If you're still confused about what to eat and not getting the results you thought you'd get by going organic, go to nutritionheretic.com and download the shit list of 7 health foods to avoid like the plague for free. The shit list details what health food companies want you to believe about the crap they peddle and why the real foods they're meant to replace are far better. Stop letting big health food dump all over you and download the shit list today.
Fat is bad for you.
I just pop a pill and I'm fine.
Meat is murder.
It's time for bad food punishment. It's time for real nourishment. It's time for the Nutrition Heretic.
The following program is provided as information only and may not be construed as medical or health advice. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. No action or inaction should be taken solely on the basis of the information provided here. Please consult with a licensed healthcare professional or doctor on any matter relating to your health and well-being.
Hello and welcome to the Nutrition Heretic podcast. This is Adrienne Hugh, the Nutrition Heretic, and we're back because we were taking a little bit of a break. And I know that we had episodes of a lot of different things coming out over the past few months, but we're back in full force again. So what I wanted to talk about is I think you guys know that I wrote a book called Drowning in 8 Glasses, and a lot of people misunderstood that the point of the book was don't drink 8 glasses of water. And it's not necessarily that. What it is that I believe that water is a mineral delivery system. And most people look at it for its calorie-free aspect or the fact that it doesn't have sugar in it, which is good. You know, it doesn't have sugar. But what's ending up happening is that a lot of people are drinking water that is completely stripped of minerals. And minerals, in my opinion, are the source of life in many ways. And when we talk about, the salt in our tears and, our body's made up of so much water, it's all carrying minerals. That's why, so many people feel so much better when they go into the ocean and they soak up all those ocean minerals. So I was feeling, I think I told you guys about an accident that I had now going on 16 years ago. And it left me in this kind of adrenal tailspin where just nothing has been 100% right ever since. And I started doing some research into magnesium because I know that magnesium is the opposite, let's say, or the balancing factor for calcium. And way too many people are supplementing with calcium and not getting enough magnesium. But there were certain things, some joint aches and things that were pointing to magnesium as a possibility. So I went out and I got some magnesium oil. And I was told, you can spray it on your armpits. Don't do that. It is painful. It was worse than childbirth, I have to say. So, with that, I have the magnesium expert on the line with me, and she's laughing at me because she's probably heard this before. Our guest heretic today is Carolyn Dean. She is a medical doctor. She's a naturopathic doctor, and she's the author of The Magnesium Miracle. Welcome to the show.
Oh, Adrienne, what an awesome introduction. My gosh. So what? You shaved your armpits and then immediately sprayed the magnesium on it?
No, I just sprayed it.
Oh my God.
And they say that when it burns, that means that you're deficient. So I'm like, oh my God, am I really that deficient? That this would, it was it would knock a prize fighter down. I mean, it was
that's amazing. No, I really haven't heard that. But
one of the most unpleasant experiences of my life.
Yeah. Well, magnesium oil, it isn't even an oil.
Right.
It's basically a magnesium chloride that's super saturated into distilled water.
Okay.
So you just keep, stirring up magnesium chloride crystals in this water until the crystals start to precipitate out. So then you back off a bit, and then, you slather that on your body. And yes, at a certain point in time, I had to use a lot of magnesium oil for my magnesium deficiency symptoms. And yeah, I was getting rashes and burns, and, there are ways around that. But I agree, it's really quite concentrated. But going back to what you were saying earlier, I think you said some pretty awesome things, because yes, water is a mineral delivery system. And I don't know how much you've read of my work, but I want people to drink enough water with unrefined sea salt in it to start getting their minerals, because we have no idea what's being done to water. Maybe the central processing plant is stripping it of, they're trying to get out chemicals and organisms and all the rest of it, but they're taking the minerals out as well.
Right. And then, and just by default, a lot of people, you end up on the road, you run out of your own water, you buy some Dasani or whatever bottled water, and that is clearly stripped of minerals, except for a few things that they add back for taste. It's not the balance of minerals that you would expect in real water.
Right. And when you hear about long-lived societies, often that's, in the mountains where after the ice melts and the ice is scraping over the rocks and the mountain streams are kind of white with all the dissolved minerals. I mean, that's healthy drinking water. So yeah, we don't have the minerals in our drinking water. We don't have it in the soil either, because no one's putting a gun to a farmer's head to put minerals back in the soil, so they don't do it. They just,
it's kind of sad when you have to put a gun to the farmer's head, but I see where you're going.
No law that tells them to do that. So, they're just going to put some nitrogen in there, some things that make the plants look green, but there's no label on your broccoli to say how much minerals are in there. We've completely ignored minerals. Vitamin C gets a lot of play because of Linus Pauling. Calcium gets a lot of play because doctors think they have to do something for this horrible osteoporosis. But when you come to look at the research, you have to have enough magnesium in the body to make the calcium work and to make the bones not be completely brittle. If you just take calcium, then you're actually going to build up calcification in the whole body, breast tissue calcification, atherosclerosis, kidney stones, heel spurs, gallstones, fibromyalgia is worsened by this type of calcification. And actually the breast tissue calcification scares me the most, because this is someone being forced to get mammograms. I suppose it's not just someone; it's women.
Although some men should consider that option.
The mammogram, if it picks up calcification, they'll immediately jump to the conclusion, oh yeah, you could have cancer, and then they'll put people through the more mammograms. Biopsies, and they'll say, well, let's go for the final solution, and they'll be doing major surgery. It's horrifying, and I don't know how much you've looked into that condition, Adrian. DCIS, disseminated ductal carcinoma in situ.
Okay.
And it's a pre-cancer. It's not even a cancer.
Yes.
So it's the possibility of cancer.
That's what I was going to ask you about, actually, but I didn't know the term, because this is what happened. This may be what happened to my mom. One of many things besides the flu shot they gave her when she wasn't going anywhere. And don't get me started. But they told her that, they just kept sending her in for mammogram after mammogram after mammogram. And then because my mom was a registered nurse. Okay. She knew what an x-ray looked like. She knew, and she said, yeah, well, they told me I have stage 0 cancer. I'm like, Ma, we all have stage 0 cancer unless we actually have cancer. Okay. I'm like, it's going to be a 0.1 at least, right? If it's something.
My God.
And so, so this is the big thing is doctors diagnosing the stage 0, which when she looked at the x-ray, she said it looked like it was dust.
Dust.
And, just like dust got on the lens. She's like, didn't look like anything.
Yeah.
But, they force her in. Next thing you know, she's getting a mastectomy. And, a couple years later, she's dead. It was just one thing after another. Like they invaded her body in so many despicable ways.
And, the major invasion, Adrian, is the fear that they engender with that kind of attack.
Yeah.
And someone close to me, they found calcification on her, and heavy dairy eater, never taken a bit of magnesium in her life, and drinking alcohol, athletic, so sweating out all her magnesium.
Right.
So it looked like calcification to me, but they kept trying to talk her into the fact, well, we can prevent anything if it's going to happen. And just the terminology they use. And, all along each stage of the way, I sort of interpret, because they do another mammogram and say, well, it's really not worse, but no, we can't show it to you. When they say, well, it's not worse, it means it's getting better. And they're afraid to tell you that, because then they'll have to admit that they were wrong in the first place,
right,
that you are getting rid of this calcification. Because I put people on high amounts of magnesium when they appear to have some sort of calcification problem. But the fear and terror, all the interventions, and then they'll tell someone with stage 0 cancer that, well, now let's do some radiation and chemotherapy, and then you can get the side effects that then lead to their early demise.
Exactly,
it's quite incredible.
It really is. So, what was your aha moment when you recognized the vital role that magnesium plays? And that everybody else was appearing to ignore?
Right. Well, it was in medical school. I do write about it in the Magnesium Miracle book. I think it was my 3rd year. I was rotating through OB/GYN, and there was a delivery in process, and this young woman had eclampsia. And eclampsia is a condition of usually later stages of pregnancy where you've got high blood pressure, fluid retention, seizures even,
right,
headaches, of course. What they did for this woman was put up an intravenous drip, and very shortly she was diuresing, which means she was passing a lot of urine.
Right.
So her edema was going away, her blood pressure came down, she stopped seizuring. And I'd already been through all my prevention magazines, and I was very interested in nutrition and health before medicine. So I thought, oh my gosh, why don't we give magnesium to everybody? And then through the years, I kept getting the answer, well, we have plenty of drugs for that. They just didn't want to consider anything natural because it wasn't a drug.
Right.
Just medicine. This was my training was in the mid 70s, and they were totally into drugs. And I thought things would change. I mean, here I am, 40 odd years later, and it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
I thought by now, after medical school, I got my naturopathic training, and I thought, this is the way to go. I mean, my practice was swamped. Day one, my practice was swamped. because that's what people wanted. And I thought, yeah, this is the way to go. But the drug companies, they scare doctors away from anything natural. Our whole training was so focused on drugs. Biochemically, we could see in our biochemistry classes, we could see on the slides that the different pathways, like my favorite is the Krebs cycle. Mm-hmm. There are 8 steps in the Krebs cycle that makes energy. It makes ATP, adenosine triphosphate. 6 of those 8 steps require magnesium. I mean, how much more do you need to know? So if someone doesn't have energy, you're lacking in ATP. You know, they go to a doctor. I'm so tired. I don't sleep at night. All the magnesium deficiency symptoms, and they're given Valium or Prozac or some ridiculous drug that merely strips them of more magnesium.
And this is that's so important what you say there, right? That last statement, because this is the same thing we see with food, where people don't realize that, eating that popsicle or whatever isn't just not good for you. It actually removes the good stuff out of you for your body to metabolize, And I think it's the same thing with these drugs. Like, people don't realize that your body has to use its own reserves now. Whatever is left, right, to metabolize this thing and excrete it, or store it somewhere. So now you're just compiling the issue, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That whole storage business is so important. I have, what's her name? Natalie McBride Campbell.
Natasha Campbell McBride.
Oh, thank you. Wow. I love the way that just tripped off your tongue. Well, I quote her, and I haven't looked into it much further, but she says that it takes 28 atoms of magnesium to process 1 molecule of glucose. And it takes 56 atoms of magnesium to process 1 molecule of fructose. So indeed, when you're eating a high sugar diet, it makes me think of what we talked about earlier, Adrian, where chefs and cooks with children just try to entice them with a lot of fruit recipes. Well, that fructose has to be metabolized through the liver in a much more complex way than simple table sugar even.
Right.
And it does require more magnesium. It does require more liver function. And the high fructose corn syrup sweeteners that are, a lot of the sodas now, they're causing a lot of liver dysfunction, even this non-alcoholic fatty liver that is a big epidemic right now. That could be from this overuse of fructose. And even in the natural nutrition communities, the vegans, the raw foodists, they entice people to their diet by telling them that, you can eat all the fruit you want. And they're absolutely causing problems.
Right. Yeah. And you see this. Yeah. I see this all the time. I have a small group on Facebook, and sometimes we just share some of the memes that we see out there. And then I try to shed the light, where, where it goes wrong, where it's ignoring the science behind all of this, because it's not just a matter of calories. Yes, there might be, this particular vitamin might be in abundance, but can you actually absorb it from that source? That's a whole other issue, right? Yeah. So a lot of times these, this data that people look at and say, see, look, it's less calories. I get, more vitamin A. And it's like, well, that's not preformed, then you have to, kind of explain why we're not comparing, apples to apples.
You know what, the word they're using now, I'm sure you've seen it, biohacking.
Yes.
This is the craziest terminology. I've started to attack biohacking.
Yay! Yeah. I have certain words that are like we're not allowed to say in my house. One is actually healthy, because, healthy doesn't mean anything anymore. You know, the healthy guy up the street from me just dropped dead of a heart attack in Honolulu airport. But you know, he was healthy. Yeah. Everybody's surprised because he was healthy. It's like, how do you define that? You know, because he used to run every day. Try again.
And there you walked right into my whole thing about extreme fitness, or at a certain age, especially men, you know, when they reach 50, it's like, I got to get out there and exercise. I've got to undo all the crap I've done the past 50 years, and I'm going to do it with running my heart out, which is what they do because they don't realize that they're sweating out their minerals and causing a lot of strain. Like the heart is susceptible because the heart is one big muscle, and you need magnesium to relax the heart after the heart muscles go through a contraction, which is caused by calcium. It has to relax with magnesium. If you don't have enough magnesium, then the calcium in your cells tightens up the muscle, keeps it vibrating, keeps it firing to the point that it'll just die.
Right. And I was going to bring that up earlier when you mentioned some of the different properties of magnesium, you know, and one of the things is it's the that's what I always tell people. It's the relaxation, balance to your calcium intake, where the calcium is more about seizing. You're talking about the seizures that the woman with the preeclampsia was having. And, you know, and then we look at the magnesium as like, you know, that relaxing factor. So it's just the balance, the other side, the yin and yang, right?
And you need those. But if I could just say, with biohacking, I have a blog, my September 19 blog, actually just the other day. Biohacker is the new health nut, I say. So
I saw that headline, actually.
Yeah. Biohacking rehashes what most of us know is taking personal responsibility for your health, proving the old adage that there's nothing new under the sun. Hacking appeals to the millennials who grew up on computers, so they incorporate the term hacking into their own biology. Yes. And you know what it is, they say that biohacking is using all the tools, you know, all the medical tools to measure their body and measure their, you know, internal bits so that they can be healthy. But see, just like you said a minute ago, there's no optimum. There's no one telling us, you know, what healthy means and what we can't even find a good measurement for magnesium. Right. So that means medicine does not measure magnesium. It uses a very archaic serum magnesium test that only measures 1% of the total body magnesium. So it's useless. So you've got these, what I say, very bright, very sick, and very motivated people trying to find answers. But what they're, you know, missing is huge pieces of the puzzle because they don't know what to measure, what's optimum. Because anytime you get a blood test, they'll give you a range and you think, well, that's kind of a healthy range, you know, I want to be in the middle. But what the range is for blood tests is a range of the sick people that are coming in for tests.
Right.
And there's nothing optimum about it. And it's really scary. And then you've got these, you know, biohackers, you know, they're trying to transform the human condition, you know, all this terminology, and it's really just taking care of your health. I even found this guide to biohacking at supplementpolice.com, and they give 7 steps. Listen to this, you'll laugh. 1, improve your posture. You know, like biohack your posture. 2, improve your nutrition. 3, be one with nature. 4, change your perspective. 5, use music for biohacking. 6, hack your flow, which means to me going with the flow. Okay. And then they have implementing biohacking tips like now they're saying taking nootropic supplements. Now they'll go for what they say smart drugs or cognitive enhancers. And so they'll just as easily grab a drug as they will a supplement because drugs are so much a part of our society. Yeah. You know, you've got these ADHD bright kids who've been taking Ritalin since they, you know, were 5 years old. So they will turn to a drug even before they'll turn to a supplement. But anyway, it's quite fascinating. They're just changing the terminology.
Right. And my issue with the term biohacking is it comes across just the way it sounds as trying to outsmart the body.
Perfect. Yes.
There's something very disingenuous about the term itself. That it's just a continuation of a lot of this stuff, really, like you said, just going down that same road that the drug companies take, right? Where they're, like, oh, well, your body's too stupid to know when to stop making cholesterol. So we got to tell it to stop making cholesterol, because that's wrong. Your body's trying to kill you. Didn't you know that?
Yeah, you sound just like me. That's exactly what I say. I say the body's brilliant. And it's trying to tell you something when it gives you a symptom, and you're too stupid to recognize it. And this business about having symptoms, and you're too stupid to realize that you may just be deficient in magnesium, something like that. And we shouldn't say people are stupid. It's just,
I know what you're saying.
The education from medicine and from public school, it does not cover your body.
Right.
And yeah, maybe you have to biohack the information, but you got to know that the tools aren't there, and the science really isn't in your favor. Science has been bought out by the drug companies. And
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's not giving you enough information about nutrition or your own body.
Right. Well, when I have some friends, you meet people on the internet, Facebook, whatever, and they're all about science, and I'm doing the air quotes. And it's like, well, GMOs, everything's been a GMO since the beginning of time. And it's like, no. You are being an ass now, because you and I both know that's not what we're talking about. Just because Bill Nye, the science guy, and that black guy from Cosmos said that it's okay after they got paid or whatever, they went away for a while and then they came back and said it was okay now, doesn't mean that we want all of our food, GMO, because again, the science isn't there to show all the claims that are being made for the GMOs, right? The claims that they produce more and they're more reliable and whatever. The people on the ground dealing with this stuff are saying, no, this is not true.
Yeah. And when you look at the European studies that aren't biased, that just plain studies that don't come from the industry, they absolutely show the poor digestibility of the GMO foods, and it's really harming the animals in the animal studies. It's really scary stuff.
Right. So speaking of studies, tell us about the magnesium studies, because in your book, you're saying that everyone but here is studying magnesium. Is that the truth?
Well, they've studied it here too, Adrian, but the doctors don't read the studies. I mean, it's just totally ignored. In medical school, we were told if you don't learn it in medicine, it doesn't exist and it's not important. So since we were never told about any nutrients in medical school, then they aren't important. That's it. Case closed. But you've got studies, for example, the Burton and Bella Altura. They are two PhD magnesium researchers, and they were sweet enough, wonderful enough to forward my Magnesium Miracle book. And they'd never done that before. They'd never got involved with sort of the public. They were always in their ivory tower. But by the time I came along, they said, look, we're not getting anywhere. We've written and researched or whatever, produced over 1,000 magnesium studies, they said, in America. And it's like nobody has listened.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And in my Magnesium Miracle book, I have 600 medical references. The review articles that have been coming out lately about magnesium, because people are starting to wake up about it. I say it's because I've been so talkative about magnesium everywhere. Magnesium has become bigger news. But anyway, in the reviews, I mean, one of the reviews has 625 references in this one paper, showing the importance of magnesium, the many side effects of magnesium deficiency. And although the FDA doesn't like us to say it, the many conditions that if you took magnesium, you wouldn't develop these disease conditions. But the FDA just wants you to say, well, it's a disease condition. Once it's a disease condition, it can only be treated by a drug.
Right. So could you tell us, actually, there's another question I want to ask, but could you tell us some of the common complaints maybe that people have that could be benefited possibly by, without getting in trouble with the FDA, by magnesium supplementation?
Well,
we know preeclampsia.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, preeclampsia. I mean, as long as I don't say you can use magnesium to treat them, then I can mention the conditions. And actually, I've listed 65 conditions in the book.
Yeah. I saw that list.
Acid reflux, and that's from muscle spasming of the lower esophageal sphincter.
That makes sense.
So any muscle that can spasm, it can spasm if you have magnesium deficiency. Adrenal fatigue, because when you're under stress, you do the fight or flight dance. And magnesium, vitamin C, and the B vitamins are necessary to support the adrenals. Mm-hmm. Alzheimer's disease, you can get neuroinflammation. Magnesium is anti-inflammatory. And also magnesium blocks heavy metals from depositing in the brain. There's angina, which is the muscle spasms of the heart, anxiety and panic attacks. I mean, it's amazing to me the number of people that have reported to me that, they were in athletics. I mean, I get NFL football players who say they just break out in a sweat and panic attacks and have heart palpitations, and they don't know what it is. And those are symptoms of magnesium deficiency. Arthritis, because of the calcification in the joints. Asthma is interesting because that magnesium actually is an antihistamine. It helps produce antihistamines in the body. And when you're low magnesium, the bronchial muscles can go into spasm, and there's your asthma attack.
Right.
Atherosclerosis, partly that's calcium depositing with the cholesterol. And cholesterol is not the bad guy in atherosclerosis, really. It's calcium.
Right.
Bowel disease, if you have constipation from slow bowel peristalsis, that's because the muscles aren't, they're kind of in constant spasm and they're not moving properly. You've got teeth grinding. You've got even cholesterol elevation. With cholesterol, the enzymatic process that creates cholesterol depends on magnesium. So if your cholesterol is high, then the magnesium is withheld so that you don't make more cholesterol. But when you look at the cholesterol drugs, they paralyze that enzyme system so that you just quit making cholesterol. So it's interesting. So magnesium, maybe I shouldn't say, is a natural statin. Chronic fatigue.
We'll bleep over that or something.
Yeah, bleep.
Just joking.
Yeah.
No, but it's kind of it's incredibly it's incredibly disturbing though that you can't say these things, just as an opinion, or as an experience more directly. Right.
Chronic fatigue syndrome. We already talked about the energy molecules. Even bladder. A lot of bladder spasms are misinterpreted as urinary frequency and bladder infection.
Right.
So if there's calcification around the urethra, that can cause bladder infections, and magnesium does dissolve calcification.
Right.
There's depression because of the involvement of serotonin and what magnesium does with serotonin. There's the ability to detoxify it. The magnesium is important in the liver P450 detoxification pathways. Diabetes. Now, here's something. Even in the medical books, it says one of the signs of diabetes is magnesium deficiency. Yep. Headaches, the muscle tension and spasm, and even migraine headaches.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. There's a doctor in New York, and one of his papers was, if you don't treat migraines with magnesium, you're missing the boat. Something really blatant was the title of his last paper.
Well, New Yorkers,
yeah,
we don't hold back.
Don't.
Not exactly subtle people, are we?
Right. And we did mention about the heart disease, where the heart can go into such spasm, it can create a heart attack. High blood pressure, if the muscles surrounding the blood vessels, the smooth muscles, if they're deficient in magnesium, they'll go into spasm and squirt your blood pressure up. I mean, that's so simple. And, the scenario that I see is people are under major stress. They've had some, home conflict or horrible thing happen. They go to the doctor for whatever reason, maybe even just an annual checkup, and their blood pressure is elevated from the stress. Nobody asks them, "Oh, are you under stress at home?" Mm-hmm. It's just, look, your blood pressure has been, climbing a little higher each appointment. It's time we put you on a blood pressure medication.
Right.
Here's your diuretic. And a diuretic will drain, supposedly takes fluid out of your body to take the pressure off your heart so that you won't have high blood pressure. It's incredible. They are dehydrating people.
Right. But then you got to drink. I remember my mom was on diuretics for ages, and she was, you got to have to drink more water because I'm on this diuretic. It's like, well, what? You're on the diuretics. Just make up your mind. Actually, I have a question about energy. You talked about the Krebs cycle, and 6 of the 8 stages require magnesium.
Right.
I'm going in 2 different places with this. The first question that I have is magnesium the most universally required throughout the Krebs cycle? You know what I'm saying? So in other words, is just as much calcium needed or in the same stages, just as many stages of it, or whatever other, mineral or vitamin or substance. So as far as that goes. But the other thing is, I'm wondering if some people might be a little bit confused, because on the one hand, we're saying this is the relaxation mineral, right? So when, things are relaxing, but it's giving me energy at the same time.
I know. It's awesome.
Right?
It's incredible. Okay. Here's some, the answer to both things, perhaps. The body requires magnesium to activate between 700 and 800 enzyme systems in the body.
Wow. So
it is the most prevalent. The next highest, I think, is zinc at about 180. So we're
so it's like that's even at that is lagging.
We're in the stratosphere.
Whoa.
It's huge. And in terms of what other nutrients are in the Krebs cycle, I brought up my slide where I found the little MGs all over the place. Mm-hmm. And, I don't see any other minerals there, but I mean, that is a very good question. But, certainly there's no calcium involved in this.
Right.
But I hear what you're saying, but I think the fact that magnesium is required 700, 800 times, compared to, I think calcium is only down in a few dozen, enzyme processes.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to kind of get a scope of that, because, I think it's, sometimes we say like, oh, it's, required as that much, but I mean, and that doesn't downplay it by any stretch of the imagination. If it's second in line, like, zinc we know is incredibly important for the processes in which it's needed. But I just wanted to kind of get a comparison on that.
All right. Yeah, I'm Googling it right now. So keep talking.
Dr. Google. So, you mentioned something really funny in the book. And when we had Ken Moorhead, who's a doctor of Oriental medicine on the show, he said he and I actually talked about going to Cuba to do some studies because he's been doing some work with breast cancer and breast conditions using acupuncture. And you have a quote or something that Dr. Seelig used to say, which is, America suffers from not invented here syndrome. And that's exactly what he was saying, was that unless studies are performed here, or, somehow it benefits the drug companies, it doesn't exist. It's just, we don't look at all those studies you talked about in Europe, where these are like all independent studies. They're not paid for by drug companies. We can't pay attention to them because they were done in Europe. We don't know what kind of criterion they're using in Europe. So we are going to ignore that.
And actually, the not invented here, because around the topic of breast cancer, I've been studying over the years something called German New Medicine or total biology. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard the term. I haven't looked into it.
Right. So total biology is what I got through France and through Montreal, Canada, because, well, I used to be a Canadian. I'm an American now.
I thought as much. Just the way she says about. Okay.
Well, what was I going to do? I'm here in America with a company, and dear Mr. Trump, is he going to let Canadians stay? So I thought, well, I'll just get my American citizenship.
Yeah, well, it's good for you because I just had a friend deported back to England.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. But still, I appreciate Trump trying to drain the swamp and allow us business people to not support all the social welfare system. So that being said, this whole business of total biology is the conflict basis of disease, so that when the mind has such a conflict that it feels it has no solution, the mind will actually put symptoms in the body to try to solve the problem, solve the conflict, and take the pressure off the brain. This is Louise Hay on steroids.
Right.
So you've got a woman whose child is in intensive care and may die. Well, her breast is going to start trying to develop more milk ducts so she can make milk to try to help, nurture the baby.
Right.
Nurture. And that stimulation then is misinterpreted by doctors as a, quote, breast cancer.
Oh, jeez.
Yep. And it's incredible how much that has played out. My total biology teacher, he's consulted with dozens of breast cancer women. And when they realize it could be a conflict and they sort out the conflict or even just recognize the conflict, the breast tissue starts normalizing. And he's had women who've just, they've healed, their mammogram is normal now. He's had women who've said, well, I'm just going to go through the biopsy or the surgery anyway because I'm scared.
Right.
They'll say the breast cancer is gone. So it really helped me sort of realize that cancer was something that we were, quote, in control of. It's not something that drops out of the clear blue sky and we're all, susceptible. It's really back to our genius body trying to help us out here, and then we misinterpret it.
Right. Yeah. The messages that we send ourselves. And I don't know if on Maui you guys have this Blue Zones initiative. There's a lot of things I'm not a fan of when it comes to Blue Zones, but one thing that I do like about it is the focus on community and sense of purpose. because we've seen this over and over again, that, regardless of what a society eats, when people have a certain amount of security and connectedness to their environment, they tend to live longer.
Of course.
Of course. And that's one of the things that I do actually appreciate about what they're, trying to inform people about.
Yeah.
So how does, you talked also about adrenal health, and I've studied a lot on adrenal health. I've helped people with, adrenal symptoms, and definitely magnesium has played a role, but not as much of a focus as your, say, salts and your vitamin C. I mean, we know that real sea salt is high in magnesium, right? But, some of those other nutrients, like all of the literature, Dr. Rind, who you quote in your book, I've attended his lectures and talked to him. Dr. Wilson, another adrenal expert, magnesium doesn't really show up as a key in adrenal health. And this is the first time, reading your book is the first time that I've seen it like really front and center as a requirement. And how does it get taxed?
Right. Well, I see it clinically when people start saturating with magnesium, their anxiety and their panic attacks, their, surges of adrenaline, they dissipate, they're able to sleep deeper, so they heal deeper, and the next day they have more energy. So there's a clinical application, but where I approach the adrenal glands is from the triad of the three major sets of hormones: the thyroid, the adrenals, and the sex hormones.
Right.
And what I see happening is when any one of those sets of hormones is weakened or affected, the other two have to come in and try to make up and help out, and then they end up getting drained. So when you look at the hormones, you don't just focus on, we've got to support the adrenal glands, that's the most important, and ignore everything else. Well, no, that's going to cause the tripod to tip even at an even more alarming rate. So when I work with balancing folks, I just say, look, you need all the minerals. That's it. 9 minerals are required to support the thyroid. It's not just iodine.
Right.
It's not just the iodine and selenium. 9 minerals, including magnesium. So that's where all the trace minerals do come in. The sex hormones, women will tell me when they're going through menopause that when they start saturating with magnesium, most of their menopause symptoms go away. Now, what's going on there? Well, we don't know exactly. We can't prove it scientifically, but if you think of the 700 to 800 different enzyme processes, finally having enough magnesium to do their work right, then perhaps they are working with your estrogen and your progesterone and being a natural diuretic and helping to solubilize your excess calcium and making your vitamin D work. I mean, that's a whole other scandal that I'm concerned about is, once they started doing the study showing that, too much calcium is actually causing heart disease in women, they moved to vitamin D and are giving people 50,000 units a week, where they may be able to put up with 1,000 or 2,000. What happens when you take a supplement of vitamin D? It's in its non-active state. To activate vitamin D, you need magnesium.
Yeah, we don't really talk about. We've talked about cholesterol a lot, but not magnesium.
Yeah, cholesterol. I mean that's just a marketing scandal itself. When I was in med school, the average milligrams of 145, and now they're trying to get people down to 180. And what it's doing is, sucking the fat out of their brain cells so that, your mind goes, you just don't have any more memory when you're on statins. And also several of the statins are fluoride drugs. So that's another scandal, because they started using fluoride in these drug compounds so that the drug would get through the blood-brain barrier, through the fatty membranes, because fluoride is soluble in fat. So they created these huge, terrifying drugs, and they say to us, well, in vitro, which means not in the body, in the test tube, when you put these drugs in test tube, they don't break down and the fluoride is not released.
Right.
Well, you put that drug in an intestinal environment with, a few billion probiotics and organisms, you're going to break that drug down.
Right.
And then that fluoride molecule is going to bind with magnesium, make an insoluble compound, magnesium fluoride, which deposits in bones, tendons, and muscles, and is very brittle. And that, to me, is why the fluoride drug Cipro causes tendon rupture, because it deposits these fluoride compounds, and no one's talking about that.
Wow. You're reminding me that in Europe, if you don't get just straight up, Celtic sea salt or whatever, Italian Riviera sea salt, you're, just, the equivalent of Morton salt, basically, over there is fortified with magnesium fluoride.
Ooh, magnesium fluoride, you're kidding.
I saw that. I was in France. I remember, I can picture it exactly where I was. I was in central France, and I was staying in a place, and, whoever was renting the place before me was, it had a kitchen in there, and they were using, just regular old table salt. And I looked at it and it said magnesium fluoride on it. It's an ingredient.
Wow.
So I want to say that it was, I'm trying to remember now what the deal was when it came to, calcium versus magnesium. As far as, being in toothpaste or whatever, but I do remember seeing magnesium fluoride in there. So it'll be interesting to see, what you're talking about, brittle bones, incidents, how that's affected now in Europe as a result of that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
More scandals.
Yeah, seriously. And I'd like to think generally that Europe has taken a more responsible path to adding things to their food,
So they've bounced GMOs, and people who've traveled to Europe, I know, I'm able to eat bread and pizza. I'm able to eat wheat over there that I can't eat in America, supposedly because it's not so hybridized and doesn't have so much gluten. I really don't, or doesn't have the preservatives, or.
Well, there's another scandal on that. While we're on the topic of scandals, there's another scandal, which is that in the drying process of wheat over here, they're spraying it with Roundup because it accelerates drying.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh no. I'm just going to, excuse me while I vomit. Oh.
Yeah. But if you ever want to go to France with me, I have, there's a lovely bakery in Lyon. I haven't been there myself, but he gets all of his organically grown grain from a small department of France near his shop, with about 30 growers who raise exclusively for him. So if you ever want to have the real French boulangerie experience, let's do it, girl.
Oh, I'd love to. I can see us now. We'd be yak.
Oh, yeah. We close the place down. This concludes part 1 of our interview with Dr. Carolyn Dean. Tune in next time for part 2, where Dr. Dean explains the downsides of supplementation and why she created a unique magnesium supplement that removes the issues typically experienced at therapeutic doses. That's next week on the Nutrition Heretic podcast.
The Nutrition Heretic Podcast is a production of Savor the Journey, LLC. Our audio editor is Nicola Popovich. Our podcast manager is Crystal McLean. And our operations manager is Michelle Med. I'm your host, Adrian Hugh, the Nutrition Heretic. You can find us at the new and improved nutritionheretic.com, where you can download the Nutrition Heretic's free shit list of 7 health foods to avoid like the plague. You can also listen to previous episodes at nutritionheretic.com/podcast. Be sure to like us on social media for updates. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/nutritionheretic and on Twitter @NutriHeretic. Contact us with show ideas, questions, or if you want to be a guest. And don't forget to rate our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher.